Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're embarking on an epic journey to one of the most remote and mysterious places on Earth. Easter Island, or as its inhabitants call it, Rapa Nui. This tiny speck of land in the vast Pacific Ocean is home to one of history's most fascinating puzzles. The colossal stone statues known as the Moai. How did they get here? Who built them? And why? Let's travel back in time and uncover the story of their birth. Our story begins not on the island itself, but far across the ocean waves. The original settlers of Rapa Nui were expert Polynesian navigators. Imagine, sometime around the 12th century, a group of brave explorers setting out from their homeland, possibly the Gambier or Marquesas Islands, over 2,000 miles away. They traveled in large double-hulled canoes, packed with everything they needed to start a new life. Plants like taro and sweet potato, animals like chickens, and most importantly, their culture, traditions, and engineering genius. When they first landed on Rapa Nui, they found a paradise. The island was lush, covered in dense palm forests, with fertile volcanic soil, perfect for their crops. Life was good, and their population began to grow. This burgeoning society, known as the Rapa Nui people, developed a complex and deeply spiritual culture. At the heart of this culture was a profound respect for their ancestors. They believed their chiefs and important elders possessed a spiritual power, or mana, that could protect the living, ensure good harvests, and bring prosperity to the clans. So, how do you honor such powerful ancestors and keep their mana alive? You build something eternal. And that's where the Moai come in. These magnificent statues weren't just carvings. They were considered living faces of deified ancestors, conduits for that sacred mana. The Rapa Nui people channeled their creativity, faith, and immense effort into creating these iconic figures to watch over their villages and protect their people. The creation of a Moai was a monumental undertaking, a true testament to human ingenuity. The journey of each statue started at a single volcanic quarry called Rapa. This place is essentially the nursery of the giants. Here, master carvers, using simple stone tools called toki, would painstakingly chip away at the volcanic tuff. Imagine the sound, the constant tap, tap, of stone on stone, echoing through the crater as these massive forms slowly emerged from the rock face. They would carve the entire front and sides of the statue while it was still attached to the bedrock. Details like the long ears, prominent noses, and thin lips were carefully shaped. Once the main body was complete, the real challenge began. They had to break the statue free from the quarry wall and then somehow get it upright. This was a process filled with incredible risk. Look around Rano Raraku today, and you'll see nearly 400 Moai in various stages of completion. Some are barely started, while others lie broken, sad reminders of a failed attempt. Each one tells a story of ambition and effort. Once a Moai was successfully carved and freed, it was slid down the quarry slopes into prepared trenches at the base. Here, the carvers would finish the back and add any final details. But the statue's journey was far from over. It now had to be transported, sometimes 4 miles, across the island's challenging terrain to its designated ceremonial platform, or ahu. This is perhaps the most debated part of the Moai story. How did they move these multi-ton giants without wheels, cranes, or draft animals? The Rapa Nui people have oral traditions that say the Moai walked to their platforms. For a long time, this was dismissed as mere legend, but recent experiments suggest it might be the literal truth. By using a system of ropes, teams of people could rock the statues back and forth, walking them forward in a shuffling motion, much like you'd move a heavy refrigerator. Imagine the sight. A massive stone giant, swaying and lurching across the landscape, guided by the chance and coordinated efforts of the islanders. It would have been a spectacular, almost magical procession. Other theories suggest they were moved lying flat on wooden sledges, rolling over logs, which would have required an immense amount of timber from the island's once abundant forests. When a Moai finally reached its ahu, it was raised onto the platform to overlook the village, its back to the sea, eternally watching over its descendants. Many were then crowned with a pukau, a separate, cylindrical stone made from a different, reddish quarry. These pukau are thought to represent a chieftain's topknot, a symbol of high status. The final step was to carve the eyes. Once coral and obsidian eyes were placed within them, the statue was no longer just a stone carving. It was believed to be alive, its mana activated, its protective gaze now falling upon the community. The sheer scale of this operation is staggering. Over a period of several hundred years, the Rapa Nui people carved and erected almost 1,000 moai. This was the golden age of Rapa Nui, a time of great social organization, artistic expression, and unwavering faith. It was a society that dedicated its entire existence to honoring its lineage, literally carving its legacy into the very rock of the island. The moai are not just statues. They are the embodiment of a people's spirit, a story of survival, ingenuity, and a deep connection to their ancestors that continues to captivate us to this day. Have you ever looked at a picture of Easter Island and wondered, how on earth did they do that? Those colossal stone figures. The Moai, standing silent guard over the Pacific Dud. They are one of history's greatest enigmas. For centuries, they've fueled our imagination, sparking theories about everything from alien visitors to lost technologies. But the real story, the one carved into the very rock of the island, is even more incredible. It's a story of human ingenuity, profound faith, and a society that reached for the heavens. Welcome to the golden age of Rapa Nui. So, let's journey back in time to roughly the year 1200 AD. Rapa Nui, a tiny, isolated speck of land, is teeming with life. Thousands of people, the descendants of intrepid Polynesian voyagers, have built a complex and thriving society. Forget the image of a barren, desolate rock. Back then, the island was covered in lush palm forests, providing everything the people needed. Wood for canoes and homes, fibers for rope, and bountiful fruit. The waters were rich with fish, and sophisticated gardens flourished inland. This was a paradise, a self-sufficient world forged by a resourceful people. It was in this vibrant environment that something extraordinary began to happen. The Rapa Nui people started to channel their energy, their resources, and their spiritual devotion into a monumental undertaking. The carving and erection of the moai. These weren't just statues. They were the living faces of deified ancestors, conduits of spiritual power known as mana. Each statue represented a powerful chief or lineage, their gaze fixed inland, watching over their descendants, protecting their villages, and ensuring the fertility of the land. The center of all this activity was a single volcanic crater, Rano. This place became an open-air workshop, a sacred quarry where the moai were born. Imagine hundreds of skilled craftsmen working with simple stone tools called toki. With rhythmic precision, they would chip away at the volcanic tuff, slowly liberating these giant figures from the bedrock. You can still see the evidence. Tedadasams of unfinished moai lie in the quarry, some nearly complete, others mere outlines in the rock, as if the workers just put down their tools and walked away. It's a haunting, frozen-in-time snapshot of this immense industrial and spiritual project. Once a statue was carved, the real challenge began. Moving it. These figures could weigh up to 80 tons. That's heavier than a space shuttle. For years, scholars debated how a society with no wheels, no draft animals, and no metal could achieve such a feat. Theories ranged from rolling them on logs to complex crane systems. However, recent research in oral traditions suggests something even more poetic. The Rapa Nui say the statues walked. Experimental archaeology has shown this might be literally true. By using ropes tied to the head and rocking the statue side to side, a team of people could shuffle it forward in a walking motion. Picture it. Teams of people, chanting in unison, pulling on thick ropes made from tree fibers, slowly and painstakingly walking their ancestor, their god of stone, from the quarry to its designated platform, or ahu. This journey, which could take weeks or even months, wasn't just a logistical challenge. It was a grand ceremonial procession, a testament to the community's collective power and faith. And what about those platforms? The ahu. These are as impressive as the statues themselves. They are masterpieces of stonework, some fitted with a precision that rivals the Inca constructions in South America. The largest ahu Tangariki supports 15 massive moai, a breathtaking lineup against the rising sun. These were the sacred hearts of the community, where ceremonies were held, and the power of the ancestors was focused. Some Moai were even crowned with a pukau, a massive red scoria cylinder, representing a chieftain's topknot, quarried from another volcano, and somehow placed atop their heads. The level of organization, engineering, and sheer manpower required is simply for about 500 years. This was the way of life on Rapa Nui. This was their golden age. It was a society completely dedicated to this spiritual and artistic expression. Clan competed with clan, not through warfare, but by building bigger, more elaborate moai, each striving to honor their ancestors more grandly than their neighbors. This obsession drove innovation and artistry to incredible heights, but it also came at a cost. The vast resources needed countless trees for ropes, rollers, and fuel, immense manpower, and a huge food surplus to feed the workers began to place an unbearable strain on the small island's ecosystem. The very success of the Moai culture contained the seeds of its own decline. The forests that had enabled their grandest achievements began to disappear. As we'll explore next time, this environmental shift would trigger a social crisis that would change Rapa Nui forever, toppling the gods of stone and ushering in a new, darker chapter in the island's history. The story of how this paradise was lost is as compelling and cautionary as the story of how it was built. The golden age of Rapa Nui is a powerful reminder of what humans are capable of when united by a common purpose and a profound belief system. They didn't need alien technology. Their tools were stone, wood, and the strength of their own community. They literally moved mountains, or at least man-made mountains of stone, all in the service of their faith. Ever looked at a vast, ancient forest and felt a sense of it feels permanent, eternal? But what if I told you that entire civilizations, glittering and powerful, have vanished because they forgot one simple truth? The forest is not infinite. This isn't a fantasy story. This is a warning from history, a tale of what happens when the last tree falls. Imagine a civilization at its peak. Let's call them the Sylvans. Their cities are wonders of architecture. Their culture is rich. Their people are prosperous. And the foundation of this prosperity, the immense, dense forest that surrounds them. It provides everything. Timber for their magnificent buildings and mighty ships, fuel to fire their forges and warm their homes, and fertile land for their crops once cleared. For generations, the forest is a limitless gift. The sound of the axe is the sound of progress. With each generation, the Sylvans grow more ambitious. Their population booms. They build bigger temples, larger fleets, and grander cities. Their appetite for wood becomes insatiable. The forests, once stretching to the horizon, begin to recede. At first, no one notices. It's just a longer walk to the timberline. But slowly, subtly, the world around them begins to change. The first signs of trouble are small. The streams that once ran clear all year now turn muddy with the rains and dry up. In the summer, the soil, no longer held in place by the intricate root systems of the trees, begins to wash away. It flows into the rivers, choking them with silt, making navigation difficult and causing floods that were once unheard of. The local climate shifts. The gentle, predictable rains become erratic deluges, followed by long, scorching droughts. The farmers are the first to truly suffer. Their crop yields dwindle year after year. The rich topsoil that nurtured their harvests is gone, washed down to the sea. What's left is barren, dusty earth. Famine, once a distant myth, becomes a recurring nightmare. The city markets, once overflowing with produce, now see shortages and soaring prices. The vibrant hum of prosperity is replaced by the quiet desperation of hunger. As resources become scarce, the social fabric begins to unravel. The Sylvans, once a unified people, turn on each other. The wealthy hoard what little food remains, while the poor starve. Riots break out in the cities. The government, weakened and unable to provide for its people, resorts to force to maintain order. Trust erodes, replaced by fear and suspicion. Neighboring states, who once traded with the mighty Sylvans, now see a weakened, fractured society. Old rivalries flare into open conflict. Wars are fought not for glory or land, but for the last remaining scraps of fertile ground and forested territory. The Sylvan Arma, once a symbol of their strength, is now a shadow of its former self, filled with malnourished and demoralized soldiers. Their great wooden ships rot in the silted-up harbors. Unable tosail. In the final act of this tragedy, the people begin to flee. A great exodus from the dying cities begins, as families search for a new home, a place with water, food, and trees. They become refugees, scattering to the winds, their sophisticated culture and knowledge dissolving with them. The grand cities, marvels of engineering, are left to the elements. The stone temples are swallowed by dust. The intricate canals are filled with sand. Within a few generations, the great Sylvan civilization is little more than a memory, a legend told by their scattered descendants. Archaeologists, centuries later, would uncover the ruins, wondering how such a sophisticated society could just disappear. The answer wouldn't be found in the remnants of their palaces, but in the silent, barren land that surrounded them. They didn't just cut down trees, they cut the branch they were sitting on. This story, while fictionalized, has played out in the real world. From Easter Island to the Maya, we've seen societies push their environments past the breaking point, leading to their own downfall. Their ruins stand as silent monuments, warnings etched in stone and dust. They teach us that our environment isn't just a resource to be exploited. It's the very foundation of our existence. Today, we are a global civilization, connected like never before. And our forest is the entire planet. The deforestation, the soil degradation, the climate shifts that doomed the Sylvans are happening right now, on a global scale. But we have an advantage. They didn't. We have their history. We have the science to understand the consequences of our actions. The story of the Sylvans doesn't have to be our story. We can choose a different path. It begins with recognizing that ecological health and human prosperity are not separate issues. They are two sides of the same coin. We can reforest our planet, restore our soils, and transition to sustainable ways of living. It requires collective will, innovation, and a fundamental shift in how we see our relationship with the natural world. The choice is ours. Will we be another civilization that historians study, wondering how we let it all collapse? Or will we be the generation that learned from the past and built a truly sustainable and enduring future? The silent ruins of history have given us their warning. It's up to us to listen. Have you ever looked at our world, with its sprawling cities and incredible technology, and wondered, how fragile is all of this? What if I told you there's a tiny, remote island in the middle of the Pacific that holds a powerful, silent warning for all of us? This is a story of Rapa Nui, or as you might know it, Easter Island. This isn't just about those giant, mysterious stone heads. It's about the people who carved them, a civilization that rose to incredible heights and then, seemingly, vanished into thin air. For centuries, the story of their collapse has been a cautionary tale, a lesson about what happens when a society consumes its resources to the point of no return. But is that the whole story? Stick around, because recent discoveries are painting a new, more complex, and perhaps even more relevant picture for our own time. Let's travel back in time. Around 1,000 years ago, a group of brave Polynesian voyagers crossed a vast, unforgiving ocean and landed on a small, isolated volcanic island. What they found was a paradise. The island was covered in dense forests of giant palm trees, home to abundant seabirds and fertile volcanic soil. They called their new home Rapa Nui. The navel of the world, life was good. Their population grew, and a complex society flourished. They developed a unique culture, a written language called Rongorongo that we still can't decipher. And of course, they began their most famous project. The Moai, these colossal stone statues, some towering over 30 feet high and weighing more than 80 tons, were carved from volcanic tuff. They represent deified ancestors, powerful chiefs who watched over their clans and their lands. Imagine the sheer human effort. Using only stone tools, they quarried these giants, meticulously carved them, and then, somehow, transported them miles across the rugged landscape to be erected on stone platforms called au. This was a testament to their ingenuity, their social organization, and their deep spiritual beliefs. To move a single statue would have required hundreds of people working together, a massive community effort. For a while, this system worked. The more impressive the Moai, the more prestige for the clan. It was a cycle of creation and devotion, but as the population grew, so did the demand for resources. The forests, which were once so lush, began to disappear. The giant palms were cut down to make canoes for fishing, for building materials, and crucially, for rollers and ropes to transport the Moai. With the forests gone, the soil, no longer held in place by tree roots, began to erode and wash into the sea. The land became less fertile, and crops began to fail. The seabirds, once a vital food source, lost their nesting grounds and vanished. The islanders could no longer build effective ocean-going canoes, cutting them off from deep-sea fish and any hope of escape. This is where the classic story of collapse takes a dark turn. According to this theory, society descended into chaos, with resources dwindling. Competition between clans intensified. The statue carving frenzy, once a source of unity, became a symbol of a society spiraling out of control. It's believed that warfare broke out. Clans began toppling each other's Moai, a profound act of disrespect, like desecrating a sacred tomb. Archaeological evidence suggests a shift towards cannibalism, a desperate last resort in a world that had run out of food. When the first Europeans arrived in 1722 on Easter Sunday, hence the name, they found a barren landscape and a small, struggling population of just a few thousand people living amidst the ruins of a once great civilization. For decades, this has been the accepted narrative. Easter Island became the ultimate poster child for ecocide, story of a people who, through short-sightedness and internal conflict, destroyed their own paradise. It's a powerful, chilling lesson. We look at our own world, our reliance on finite resources, our changing climate, and we can't help but see the parallels. Are we, on our own global island, making the same mistakes? But what if that story isn't entirely true? What if the collapse of Rapa Nui was far more complicated? This is where modern science comes in, and it's completely changing our understanding of what happened. Recent archaeological research, led by scholars like Terry Hunt and Carl Lippo, presents a different perspective. By analyzing ancient pollen and soil samples, they've discovered something fascinating. The island's deforestation might not have been caused solely by humans. The Polynesian rat, which arrived with the first settlers, likely played a huge role. These rats, with no natural predators, would have experienced a population explosion. They ate the palm nuts and seeds, effectively preventing the forests from regenerating. So, it wasn't just axes and saws. It was a slow, creeping ecological change, exacerbated by an invasive species. Furthermore, new studies of the islanders' tools and agricultural techniques reveal a people who were not reckless, but incredibly adaptive. They built thousands of lithic mulch gardens, where they strategically placed rocks in their fields to protect the soil from erosion, improve water retention, and fertilize the ground. This was a sophisticated, sustainable farming method designed to work on a challenging landscape. It shows a deep understanding of their environment, not a careless disregard for it. And what about the warfare and cannibalism? While some conflicts certainly occurred, newer evidence suggests it may have been exaggerated. Many of the weapons once thought to be spearheads were likely just agricultural tools. The evidence for widespread cannibalism is also thin. Instead of a society tearing itself apart, many researchers now see a community that was remarkably resilient. So, if it wasn't a self-inflicted ecocide, what really caused the final, devastating blow? The answer seems to lie with the arrival of outsiders. European contact introduced diseases like smallpox and tuberculosis, to which the Rapa Nui had no immunity. This decimated the population. Worse still, in the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders kidnapped roughly half of the remaining population, including the island's leaders and scholars who held the key to the Rongorongo script. By the time the few survivors were returned, they brought even more disease back with them, nearly wiping out the entire culture. This revised history doesn't absolve the Rapa Nui of their impact on the environment. They did cut down the forests, but it reframes them not as foolish destroyers, but as ingenious survivors who managed their limited resources for centuries, adapting and innovating until they were overwhelmed by forces they could impossibly control. Invasive species and foreign diseases. So what is the true lesson of Easter Island? Perhaps it's not simply don't cut down all your trees. The new evidence suggests a more nuanced and powerful message. It's a story of incredible resilience in the face of environmental change, but also a stark warning about the fragility of any isolated system. A single unforeseen event on invasive species, a new disease can push a stressed system past its tipping point. Today, our world is more interconnected than ever, but we face similar challenges on a global scale. We are dealing with climate change, biodiversity loss, and the risk of global pandemics. The story of Rapa Nui teaches us that while human ingenuity and adaptation are powerful tools, they aren't foolproof. It highlights the importance of foresight, of understanding the complex, interconnected nature of our ecosystems, and of recognizing that our actions can have unforeseen consequences that ripple out for generations. The Moais still stand, silent sentinels watching over a changed landscape. They're not just monuments to a fallen civilization, but echoes of a complex past. They remind us that survival is a delicate balance, and that the fate of our own island, planet Earth, rests in our hands. The question they seem to ask across the centuries is, will we learn from their story in time? Thanks so much for watching. If this story made you think, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of our world.